of Michigan, where members can get big discounts on essential goods and services. Find out more and find a credit union today at creditunionlink.org. And put some play in everyone's holiday with instant games from the Michigan Lottery, with top prizes from $5,000 to $500,000. Holiday instant games are fun to give and fun to get.
Listen again next week at this time for another segment of Clearly Community right here on your favorite Clear Channel Media and Entertainment radio station.
Factory Surplus Sales in Montague has a huge selection of winter apparel. Hats, jackets, mittens, boots, and more. Everything your family needs to keep warm. All at huge savings. Factory Surplus also has everything you hunters need to stay warm in the woods.
Today's music stars learn from the legends. You can go right to the source with the Roots of Country channel. Hear the icons of country music nonstop. Merle, Hank, Tammy, Willie,
I can't wait to get on the road again.
George,
He stopped loving her today.
Johnny.
I walk the line.
The technology changes, but the music is timeless. Hear Roots of Country on iHeartRadio or at iHeartRadio.com.
America had just gone to war when Felipe Adams volunteered.
I knew what I was signing up for. I knew the consequences. I took a bullet to the side and left me paralyzed.
For Armando de la Rosa, the Navy was a chance to serve and see the world.
I got medically discharged in 2001.
Armando and Felipe were brought together by a unique organization that serves our paralyzed veterans.
If there was no PVA, it'd be a lot of confusion. Our training is to better the veteran. We help out with the auto grant, the special housing adaptation grant, education, prosthetics. Our main focus is spinal cord injury and disease, but we see anybody.
First thing he had asked me before he even asked my name was I being taken care of as a veteran? And I thought that was pretty good.
Changing lives, building futures. That's Paralyzed Veterans of America. To learn more, visit PVA.org.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Clay Aiken, and I believe that number should be zero. Believe in zero.
Join the effort. Visit UNICEFUSA.org.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
Good morning, Muskegon. This is Jim Riley, and you're listening to Eye on Muskegon. Your host for this community conversation is me, and I'm sitting with my co-host, my Democrat friend, been around a long time in this community, and a great addition to the show, Sean Mullally. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Jim, and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays. Merry Christmas coming up in just a few days, and Brian Thomas operating the board. Good morning, Bri.
And good morning.
We are all, I got a little late. I got early start this morning, but I'm fuzzy, and I think that's maybe what happens when you've got Christmas coming down the pike, and then shortly thereafter, then you've got New Year's. And, of course, we all did survive the Mayan apocalypse, so.
And a slightly white Christmas, at least, it looks like.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Yeah, maybe a mauve Christmas, but we've got lots of stuff to talk about. What an incredible week that we've had, not just here in Muskegon, certainly nationally. And I want to start off with a quote from someone I've had and continue to have great respect for, and this is President Ronald Reagan. Quote, "We don't have $1 trillion debt because we haven't taxed enough. We have $1 trillion debt because we spend too much." And, of course, the term trillion was meant to really shock you back in the 1980s, but unfortunately we now have at minimum about a $16-17 trillion debt, and from the experts who have said, wait a minute, yeah, but you're not including the underfunding of Social Security, Medicare, VA, and others, and that actually is closer to the 40 to 60 trillion. So our problem in this country, according to Ronald Reagan and many folks, is not that we are unfairly letting successful people walk off with extra money. but in fact, that the folks who we've elected, for the most part, are really spending money that they don't have. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to hit just some things that really knocked me on my butox this past week. The Federal Reserve announced just this week that in addition to purchasing what they call mortgage-backed securities, and those would be the Freddie Macs and the Fannie Maes. In other words, the Federal Reserve will be buying from the federal government, the U.S. federal government. They were buying around $40 billion of these bonds every month, and they were buying them because nobody else would buy them, or at least at those interest rates. They just announced, with apparently some satisfaction and some pride, that they will begin, in addition to the $40 billion, they will begin to buy $45 billion per month of U.S. Treasury bonds. Now, that's $85 billion a month that the Federal Reserve will be buying from the United States Federal Treasury. Now, of course, you can add that up. That's over $1 trillion a year. And some people might ask, well, where does the Federal Reserve get its money?
Well, they're fortunate enough that they happen to own these presses.
Yeah, they just make it up. They just make it up. It's no different than if Sean, you and I were next door neighbors, and you're running your family and your home, and you're paying your bills, and you're out there mowing the lawn, and you've got maybe a 5-year-old car, and you're doing the roof work on your own. And I work at the same place you do. I've got the same number of kids and wife and the whole thing, but I've got a brand new Lexus out front. I've got the brand new roof put in, and everything is great. We've taken fantastic trips. And you might look over to me and say, hey, Jim, we make the same money. We work at the same job. Why are you able to have all this extra money? And I would proudly say, Sean, I get these credit card applications. Every week I get 2 or 3 of them. I fill them out, and they loan me money. It's really fabulous. And it is really fabulous as long as I keep getting those credit card applications in the mail. And but at some point, you might say, geez, that Riley guy, he's driving off the cliff, because at some point he'll have to pay that back, and he won't be able to. And that's exactly what our Federal Reserve is doing. And it's frightening, because this announcement wasn't big news. They did it with a certain sense of pride. At some point, they will have to add this. Remember, this $1 trillion, over $1 trillion a year that they're buying with funny money, which is clearly that's all it is, is not, to the best of my knowledge, even added into the mix of how much in debt the United States is. I didn't hear any of the Republicans screaming bloody murder about this.
Now, the intention of these measures, is this where they're targeting to keep the long-term interest rates down?
Well, that's the intent.
Hopefully banking that it won't cause runaway inflation, although that is difficult to predict.
Interest rates are a separate item from inflation. Mm-hmm. Anybody who lives in the United States knows we've had very significant inflation in the last 4 years. We know our food's gone up. We know our gasoline, even though it's come down recently, is up certainly higher than it was 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. We know that our taxes are up. Anybody who pays insurance, if you have car insurance or homeowners insurance, that's gone up dramatically. Almost everything that we buy, with the exception generally of electronics, but almost everything that we buy has gone up. So we've had significant inflation in this country.
But interest rates. Not all inflation is created equal, because you'll always get that scenario. People say, well, look at what you can buy a television or a computer for today compared to 20 years ago.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, that's not inflation. How much does it cost to fill your tank of gas or to put food on your table?
That's right. And there are, of course, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is a measure of a basket of goods. And there are any number of ways that you can play with that basket. The federal government's been doing it for years. But inflation is a number. It's an issue, and you don't need to be told that things cost more today than they did 4 years ago. But interest rates are a separate issue, and you're right, Sean. The at least the stated intent of the Federal Reserve is to keep these interest rates low. But of course, just like you and I as neighbors, I want to keep my lifestyle up because I get these credit cards, and certainly I wouldn't want to tell the wife and the kids that we're not going to be able to take the big vacation. So I'm going to continue this addiction to the credit cards in the same way that the Federal Reserve is doing their addiction to making up funny money. There may be a noble reason, I suppose. Same thing with me and my phony money credit card thing. It might be a noble reason. I want my kids to go to a nice school and have a nice car and have nicer clothes than those Sean Mullally families got over there. But noble or not, what can't continue on forever will not continue on forever. And I bring that up just again, it didn't get much publicity. I didn't hear the Republicans complaining much about it. I didn't hear the Democrats complaining much about it. I didn't hear anybody really talk about this. This is really scary. This is $1 trillion a year of money that is at least we would get the Chinese on the hook before they would buy it from us. Now we can't even get the Chinese or the Japanese or the Brits, who are the largest holders of our debt, or actually who used to be. I believe the Federal Reserve now is the largest holder of its debt. Think about that. Think about that. You want to buy stuff, and you went to the bank, and the bank says, "No, Sean, we're not going to loan you any more money." You said, "No sweat. I'll just borrow it from Sean Reserve." So anyway, that's what's going on there, and I do think it's an important issue that we all need to go really talk to our elected officials about. In our county, the only national elected official who will really return your phone calls would be Representative Huizenga. I'd strongly recommend you give him a call. As we get closer to Senator Levin's reelection, he may start returning calls. I know that Senator Stabenow didn't even when she was looking for election. So
well, they return my calls. I don't know what's the difference between you and you.
Oh,
and
really?
Me, Jim,
okay. Well, then let's give her a call too. But the point is, this is an issue that ought to be important to everybody. And I'll just read. This is a statement from the Hoover Institution, which tends to be a conservative institution. It's a think tank, but truly everybody knows that what they're saying here is true, and I'll just read it. It says, "The United States will soon confront a major economic problem, perhaps one unparalleled in the nation's history. It won't strike tomorrow, next week, or next month, but it is out there, its roots sown by the demographics of the past half-century and a body politic hesitant to tamper with the aging institutions of government. When it emerges, like a tsunami, the destructive consequences of amassing unprecedented federal indebtedness will be overwhelming, and though seemingly distant, when it rears its head, it will rise suddenly in our consciousness as if coming without warning." And I have no question in my mind that what they say is true. And as examples, I've mentioned this in the past, but I don't think we can mention it too often. The city of Detroit in 1966 was, I believe, the 5th largest city in the country. I lived in the Detroit suburbs at the time, and a child of 10, 12, 14 years old could very safely hop on the bus, drive down Woodward, and spend the whole day in the city of Detroit. In 1967, 1 year later, that couldn't happen. In 1 year later, Detroit went from a booming, thriving city to an absolute third world country, and amazingly, in the ensuing 40 years, it's gotten worse almost every single day. Mm-hmm. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Soviet Union. There was the United States CIA prepared a briefing which they presented to the United States government, the top leaders, that said we've looked at what's going on in the Soviet Union. Their business plan, their business model seems to be working. Their military is strong, their economy is strong, etc. And we see no reason to think that there'll be any problems in the Soviet Union going forward, as far as we can see. Going forward, the Soviet Union disintegrated within 6 months. Of the smartest people that we had in the United States, reviewing and looking forward as to how the Soviet Union was going to perform going forward.
And in fact, keeping up appearances, but they weren't really being forthcoming with us, letting us look at their books, if you can imagine that.
Well, exactly.
They hid their problems.
And think about it, exactly. And that's what government people do. They hide their problems. And we have these same problems here in Muskegon County. We have them to a lesser extent in the state of Michigan, because the governor and the legislature has made some attempts to turn this state around, but of course we still remain one of the highest unemployment states and one of the states least likely to attract employers. So maybe we can just take that jump and start talking about this right to work issue, which very, very big deal in the state of Michigan. And we saw Stephen Crowder, who was a contributor to Fox News television, and he was actually clearly attacked at that meeting. Last week we had Jim Chiodo from the Ottawa County Patriots in studio, or not in studio, but on the phone, and he was actually in the tent that was taken down. And my thought was that if you were on the steps in the lawn there of the Capitol building of the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And if it was a group, let's just say of union folks, and they had a tent and they were very peacefully standing around, and a group of Tea Party people who were just outraged at the abuses of the unions, of what the unions were doing, the home health care issue, which of course thankfully will end soon, but the other abuses that we've seen with unions, if they were just so inflamed that they threw punches, caused injury, tore down a tent, and they cut it up actually after it was down when people were in it, there would be, I would think, extreme outrage in the media. What are your thoughts? So you're connected with a group that I'm not quite so connected with, but it would seem to me that if the Tea Party did it, it would be a big deal.
Yeah, you've brought up the issue of the tent, and I've heard a number of different accounts of that. Some saying it was a staged event, taken down from the inside. Some say it was taken down from the outside. I don't know what happened. There was.
What do you believe?
There were people. What do you believe? After it collapsed, and from what I understand, when people saw that people were still inside, they were cutting it open to let the people out, as opposed to doing that for acts of vandalism.
Is that what you believe?
But, I don't know what to believe as far as that goes, but I do think this whole tent issue is very much a sideshow. I think the most interesting thing going on that day was what was happening inside the Capitol, and I don't suspect you and I will entirely agree on the merits of the Right to Work bill, but I think what's really worth looking at is the process by which this bill was passed from a perspective of transparency and government accountability. I think doing something so significant in a lame duck session by legislators who many of them had just been fired, and now they've been voted out of office, and now they're doing probably the most significant thing of their entire term. I don't think that was very accountable, and I think it was done much too quickly without any public input.
Well, didn't we just have a very serious statewide public input where the unions had pushed for a constitutional amendment to force, by the force of law, force companies in the state of Michigan to make union membership a requirement in order to work? And didn't the citizens of the state of Michigan just totally overwhelmingly reject that notion?
Citizens voted against every constitutional amendment that was put before them in this last election,
okay,
and I think
you wanted to focus. So let's talk about the one that you wanted to focus on.
I think
did not the citizens have a voice? As a matter of fact, in the state of Michigan, I was looking at the voting numbers, and it wasn't as if people went out and voted for the president and then didn't vote for the Senate or local issues or whatever. They voted pretty much across the board, overwhelmingly. They had a choice on this. Why would not, when you have a plebiscite, when you've got the ability of people to tell our legislators how they feel, what would be wrong with the legislator saying, okay, I hear you, and I'm going to act on your request?
Yeah, I think people were very responsive to the notion of let's not mess with the Constitution. That was pushed very strongly with all those proposals, but specifically Proposal 2, people said very loudly, let's keep things the way they are. Let's not make any radical changes. And that's what they voted for when they said no. They said things are working the way they are.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They said we don't want the unions to have more power. They didn't say we're happy with what it is.
But they also did not say let's not radically change things in the other direction either.
How did they say that?
Well, a no vote is a vote for the status quo. And
no, it isn't. With all due respect, no, it isn't.
Now, here's what I would respect. I would very much respect, had Governor Snyder or many of those other Republicans, had they gone through the campaign trail and said to everybody during the election, vote for me and I'll enact Right for Work, and then after the election they had done what they said, I mean, that's good governance. But I don't recall any of them campaigning on that. In fact, Snyder said for a long time he did not want this to happen until after the election, and then you see it pushed through. And I don't think that's very respectful of constituents.
It's been pushed through, and there have been many studies out there, and I know that there are studies on the left, but I'd like to run some studies here. This is the Venuccio Lehman report. Between 1980 and 2011, overall employment levels rose by 71% in right-to-work states. In non-right-to-work states, they rose by 32%. So that's more than double. Productivity gains from escaping union rules were the main reason why corporations were interested in getting away from unions. It's pretty clear. There are very few corporate leaders that say, I'd much prefer to have a union than not. And if, in fact, you want to attract employers to your state, which, of course, would hopefully result in employees, who would be the preferable group to make happy, the unions or the employers?
Well, I think you can pull studies from multiple angles. The one I've heard quoted most repeatedly from the other side is looking at, we got roughly half the states now close to right to work versus not. And if you look at average wages in one group versus the other, the right to work states typically have about $1,500 per year lower wages than the non-right to work states.
And doesn't that attract employers more? Would employers be more likely to go to a state where they have the higher wages and compensation, or the lower?
Well, I'm not sure that it's that clean cut. I think if you look at, for example, Snyder has liked to compare Michigan to Indiana. I think you can also look at the state of Minnesota, for example, as a non-right to work state, as a positive model. You can look at a lot of the southern states. The one that's most quoted is Mississippi, as a comparison of, it's not a panacea. You know, a lot of the southern states are right to work, and a lot of them have lower standards of living.
Well, we're going to come back to that. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back with Sean Mullally, Jim Riley, EyeOnMuskegon, talking about freedom to work, or maybe right to work.
Heads up. Here where it all began, with the roots of soul on iHeartRadio.
Do you like good music?
The icons of R&B, from Aretha to Stevie, on one incredible station. James Brown, Al Green, Otis Redding, Sly and the Family Stone, The Drifters, and of course, Motown. Check out the roots of soul on iHeartRadio or at iHeartRadio.com.
This holiday, make a good gift an awesome gift with Xfinity from Comcast. You'll get the fastest internet and now the fastest in-home Wi-Fi for all your new devices. For a limited time, get the Xfinity Triple Play for $99 a month for 12 months. Plus, get HBO free for 3 months and get $100 back. Visit Comcast.com/Xfinity. Xfinity, the future of awesome. Offer ends 12/21/12. Restrictions apply. Limited to the starter extra Triple Play for new residential customers. After promotion, regular rates apply. Equipment installation taxes and fees extra. Must order service online by visiting Comcast.com/Xfinity.
It's here, and it's big. Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC has saved the biggest sale of the year for the final weeks of 2012. Every vehicle in Benton's massive 20-acre motor mall is on sale with huge year-end clearance prices. Shop over 1,000 vehicles and make the best deal you'll find anywhere. Benton has authorized their staff to pay even more for your trade for the final weeks of 2012. We want and need your trade, no matter the year, make, or model. We'll pay you more for it, guaranteed. Drive a new Chevy Silverado 4x4, just $198 a month. A 2013 Chevy Equinox, just $119 a month. Or a Chevy Malibu, pick your color, just $109 a month. Chevy Cruze, only $89 a month. Get 0% for 72 months on select models. Due to our record sales this year, GM has authorized additional discounts up to $9,000 for this sale. Hurry, shop the year-end clearance sale this week while selection is best. No deal will be refused. It's where Michigan shops. Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC, Henry Street, Muskegon. Happy holidays from your friends at Benton.
Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry, so...
And here we are back again, EyeOnMuskegon. Hey, we were talking about the freedom to work, the right to work issue, and just a couple little additions to this. And this is, of course, unions, but in the state of Michigan, We know that our education system is totally, at least the public education system is controlled by the unions. And here you have a situation, this is in the Chippewa Valley School District, which is in Macomb County. But they have to pay, the Chippewa Valley School District has to pay $103,807 to a licensed teacher, a qualified teacher, but to act as the union steward, to handle union business. So it just seems a little odd to me that the taxpayers would have to pay for somebody to handle union business. Isn't that what union dues ought to be about? It's not like the unions don't have millions and millions and millions of additional dollars, because we see that they funnel all those into Democrat candidates and Democrat initiatives and things of that sort. Certainly in Michigan, they've spent millions, as we know, trying to use the force of law to force people to be in the union. And it kind of interesting aside, in that district, there's another teacher who's allowed to spend half of his time involved in union business, and that particular teacher, who's a half-time teacher, receives a compensation of $104,480 a year, $104,000 a year as a half-time teacher. So clearly, if I was running the school, and perhaps you'd agree, but maybe not, clearly, if I was running the school, I would say, geez, I wish we didn't have the union, because at the very least I get myself about $150,000 of additional money that I could put towards education rather than put towards paying union stewards. And again, the union folks do, the union leaders do extort under the force of law until we're going to change this soon. But they do force employees to pay the union dues. Doesn't it make sense that they should at least pay for their own union stewards? Why should the employer have to pay for the union stewards on the other side? What's the logic in that?
Well, I'm not too familiar with the contract between the ME and that school district, but I will tell you the union I'm in, I'm one of the financial trustees for, and when it comes to like you mentioned, the political spending, we have a voluntary PAC set up. Members can donate to on a voluntary basis. Some do, some don't. That is where the political spending comes from.
Seriously? It doesn't come from dues. No union dues that are forcefully taken from employees are spent on political campaigns? That's just not true.
What that is spent on is our representing of the membership.
I think maybe we want to talk about that after the break.
That's actually a matter of law. I mean, you can't legally spend the dues money on political activity, and that's why a lot of the unions set up those PACs.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, look, we got another break coming up, and after the news, we'll be back. We're going to talk about right to work. We're going to talk about gun control. We're going to talk about, actually, an interesting one, I think, to me anyway, is the senior transit. Should we be providing free transit to those folks in Muskegon, the city of Muskegon? We'll be back.
Now at Maple Hill Golf in Muskegon, Holland, and Granville, get great holiday gifts like Bushnell GPS watch, fully preloaded and no fees. Only $139.99 after $50 rebate. Plus dozens of $9.43 specials. Maple Hill Golf on the corner of Sternberg and Dangle in Fruitport, or maplehillwestgolf.com.
In the streets below, traffic had stopped. Pedestrians were lying on sidewalks and curled up in doorways. There was no sign of violence, no wrecks, nothing like that. It was as if the people in New York had simply decided to stop whatever they were doing and pass out. Ice coated my stomach. The invasion has started. To find out what happens next, read Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library. And visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
I took a bullet to the side and left me paralyzed.
For injured veterans like Felipe Adams, there are veterans like Armando de la Rosa ready to help. Paralyzed Veterans of America, changing lives, building futures. Visit PVA.org.
958. The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090, WKBC Muskegon, and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Say, little Chico Pit, Mr. 305.
Hey, this is Pat Monahan from the band Train.
What's going on, everybody? This is Neo.
What's up? I'm Alicia Keys.
Hey, guys, I'm Bruno Mars. Listen to your favorite station.
Anytime, anywhere.
On iHeartRadio. I love listening to my favorite radio stations on iHeartRadio.
Or create your own custom station.
On iHeartRadio.
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 You can now listen to iHeartRadio in your vehicle. If you drive a Ford equipped with Sync App Link, you can link iHeartRadio via your smartphone to your vehicle's entertainment system and access many of iHeartRadio's features hands-free with simple voice commands like what's playing or add to favorites and more. Go to Ford.com/sync for details. Driving while distracted can result in loss of vehicle control. Only use mobile phones and other devices, even with voice commands, when it is safe to do so. Not all features are compatible with all phones. Sync App Link is available on select models and compatible with select smartphone platforms. Commands may vary by phone and App Link software.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. Sunny to partly cloudy today with a high of 33. North winds 5 to 10. Tonight partly cloudy in the evening, becoming overcast overnight. A low of 26. Northeast winds 5 to 10. Tomorrow cloudy with a high of 32. Northeast winds 5 to 10. And then for Christmas Day, a mix of clouds and sunshine with a high of 32. Keeping you informed, this is News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon. Looking for ways to save time and put a little green back into your pocket this holiday season? Look no further than Service One Federal Credit Union. Service One FCU offers free online and mobile banking, bill pay, and mobile text banking so members can access account information virtually anywhere, day or night. Stop in today to sign up or learn more at 1075 East Sherman Boulevard or at 1625 East Wind Drive. Service One FCU is federally insured by the NCUA.
Energy Shots. Make the switch to a better source of energy. Available at GNC, CVS, and your local retailers.
The Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090. WKBZ.
Well, you dadgum government.
And we're back at EyeOnMuskegon. Got Sean Mullally, Brian Thomas, and Jim Riley, your host here. Hey, on this day in history, we're gonna touch in just a moment on the. We'll wrap up our in-depth discussion about freedom to work. But on this day in history, I found it kind of interesting. I started off with my little story about the Federal Reserve. On this day in 1913, the Federal Reserve System was established.
The monster from Jekyll Island.
How did that work out for you? And another one, gotta love our wonderful Congress. In 1975, the United States Congress, in its deep wisdom, passed the Metric Conversion Act. And Sean, you might be a little young for this, but the folks, apparently, they had been taking, the congressmen and senators have been taking some junkets to Europe, and they liked the idea. They liked that French language, the accent, and the English, and all the cool things in Italy and Germany and all. And they said, we ought to be more like Germany and the rest of the countries in Europe. So they decided we all ought to go metric. Needless to say.
Well, we did.
No, we didn't. As a matter of fact, it didn't work out very well at all. Whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, certainly the people did speak on that.
However, technically, the very technical definitions now of our units of measure, inches and in miles and whatnot, are based on a metric system if you go to the actual Bureau of Standards.
Well, that may be, but they're certainly not based on that particular Metric Conversion Act bill. And of course, I think one of the main reasons why people resisted it was when we went to liters in gasoline, and it really goofed people up in terms of how do you pay? There's a rough conversion from liters to gallons.
People don't like change.
Well, they didn't like that kind of change. We have change all the time, but that particular change was not well received. But anyway, hey, let's get back. I did want to just touch base on the right to work issue. As far as the thuggery, and to me this is maybe as important as the issue itself, because I certainly can see that people on the left will who are supporting of union membership, forced membership, that they've got their statistics, and the folks who say, wait a minute, the right to work states are doing better. And I think you have to do your own homework there. I mean, I've done mine, and I'm convinced that right to work is better for everyone in the state, with the exception of the union leadership. And you've done yours, and you're convinced otherwise. But I am very concerned when I hear, as you've said, and I'm not knocking you on this at all, but that the unions have been out very successfly, apparently, because you've picked up on it, and saying, well, wait a minute, this was a staged event, the taking down of the tent, and the thuggery with the fist flying and box cutters being taken out and things of that sort either didn't happen, or it was really the Tea Party people's fault or whatever. In this instance, it's pretty easy to figure it out because there is video. Steven Crowder's got unedited video. It's on, actually we put it on EyeOnMuskegon and MuskegonPundit.com, and you can probably go to Fox News or just Google unedited Steven Crowder. You can see the entire video, and to suggest that this was the fault clearly of the victims, and of course the N-word and all the things that were said about the gentleman who had the hot dog stand and all those things, to suggest that this was in any way caused or spurred on by anyone other than the union thugs who actually did it. And it wasn't all the union people at all. It was a very small number of people that were involved in this thuggery and this breaking of the law. It does sadden me that the media, again, had this been a reverse, had the Tea Party been the people who had done the thuggery, they would have gone berserk about this. And when we get to a state, which sadly we seem to have arrived at least the beginnings of, when we get to a state where the media is going to look at actions and allow one group to do things that they absolutely would not allow another to get away with in terms of breaking the law, in terms of violence, in terms of obnoxious behavior, that does scare me. We saw this in the early days of the Nazi takeover of Germany. We've seen it in any number of different types of dictatorships throughout the country. To a certain extent, we saw it in Detroit when the thievery and the awful behavior of many of the black leaders in Detroit was excused, but it was not excused as it should not have been when the other folks of another hue were caught doing the same. And what that does is it lets people know that you've got to run away from the media, and that's scary. So, but you had some points about right to work.
One thing I think is worth commending at the rallies at the Capitol when right to work was being passed is I think it's worth commending the UAW brought in a lot of unpaid volunteers to do crowd control and keep things orderly, and that made the job of the state police much easier. Anytime you have a spontaneous crowd of 12, 15,000, however many it was, there's going to be some chaos. But the UAW brought in their volunteers and kept it as orderly as possible. Anytime you have an event open to the public, you're going to get some hooligans show up, and that happened. But I think it's important that we don't judge the vast majority of people who are there to do something in a legal, orderly fashion by a few hooligans that crash the party, and that goes for whoever's organizing.
One of those protesting, one of those they're in support of the union concept, was this teacher I mentioned to you who's making $103,000 a year. She took the day off from her job as a union steward per se, and so she wasn't there unpaid. She got her pay and her compensation for that day. So others were there. As a matter of fact, we know for a fact that 2 school systems in the Detroit area had to shut down because the teachers said they were not going to show up and did in fact not show up. So they were still paid. They still got their compensation, and they did go and protested. But you had another point that you wanted to mention about forced membership in unions.
Yes, you've brought up this issue, and it is the number one question brought up with regards to the right to work question, and that is, about the supposed forced membership in the union, and that is the question of, should an individual employee, if the majority of employees in the workplace vote to form a union, and you have a dissenting person that doesn't want to be in it, should that person be forced by his co-workers' majority vote to participate by paying dues? And that's really the crux of the matter. And I think if it were just that, I think the whole issue would be a lot less controversial to just say, hey, let him make his choice, either be in or be out. But that's not where the law ends. The law also obliges the union to expend resources representing this person, whether or not they pay their dues. And I think that's where the real rub comes, and that's what makes it so controversial. If you owned a business, say if you owned a restaurant, and you were obliged to feed someone when they walked through the door, and then it was up to them whether or not to pay the bill, you'd have a hard time keeping your doors open. And that's the situation unions are put in. It's a very financially untenable situation when you have to expend resources on people who have no obligation to pay you for that service.
But aren't the unions providing a service?
They do provide a service.
Okay, and wouldn't it make sense then for people to voluntarily decide whether they want that service or not?
They're not deciding whether or not they can get the service. They're deciding whether or not to pay for the service they get anyway.
Suppose I decide that you're going to get an extra 200 channels on your cable TV, and I'm going to force you to pay for it. Extra $100 a month. There you're getting the service.
Yeah.
But you don't want to pay for it. You don't want that service. Maybe. What about people who say, "Wait a minute, if the union was such a great deal, wouldn't it make sense for them to offer their service just like everybody else? Comcast offers a service and others, and say, look, attract me. Tell me why I should be a member."
What I would like to see, and maybe this is somewhere where you and I would agree, is I would like to see a right to work bill introduced that was crafted differently, that was crafted so that people could opt in or out of membership, but when they opted out and they didn't pay their dues, they would be truly on their own, and the union wouldn't be obliged to represent them if they needed it.
I'd agree with you on that.
I would love to see how much public support that would get.
I wonder why that's not. I wonder if what you say is true, and I suspect it is. I wonder why that hasn't been part of the deal, because that way, then the unions folks could organize and they could bargain on their own, and if they were able to get better wages and better compensation otherwise, then of course that would be a tremendous attraction. Well, anyway, that's the issue. What hopefully the media will be on this. Thuggery is illegal. It's wrong. It's morally wrong, and we want to make sure that win the argument on the merits. We do now have some choice. I think a classic example is right in Norton Shores, where you have union Myers across the street from non-union Walmart. And I think anyone who's been to both, I've been to both all the time, the very little difference in terms of the service that you get. The employees all seem to be well-trained and certainly pleasant and easy to work with. Prices are relatively the same. Both companies seem to be doing well. And I do know this, that when you look at real numbers, and apparently this has been done, but when you compare the pay and the compensation of, let's say, take a Walmart, which is not, or take similar situation with all the non-union auto plants. The pay and the compensation of union and non-union tend to be pretty close. So there isn't the necessity of the union. See, one of the nice things is, if the employees believe that they are being abused by a particular company, they have the right to vote to unionize, and those who are always, nothing's happened to change that anybody can make a vote. The only thing is that if you've said, wait a minute, I don't want to vote, I don't want to become a member of this union, I don't want to have to pay their dues, now you have an opportunity to exercise that. But this story isn't over. We're going to talk about this a lot over the next 2 years, as has been promised, sadly, by many of the union workers who are promising action that may be above and beyond the legal. Hey, let's talk about something else. That this is a city of Muskegon. And there were two initiatives in this November election. One was to continue on, correct me if I'm wrong here, but one was to continue on providing, the city of Muskegon provides something called senior transit, which is mostly cars, but I guess they got some vans and things that take seniors. I don't know what that definition would be, but they essentially provide a free taxi service. Now, this is in a city that has unquestionably the best bus connections and the best bus service in our entire county via the MATS, the Muskegon Area Transportation System. So in addition to having the best, very, very monstrously well-funded, almost for free, seniors can ride, what each way is it? 60 cents each way? 30 cents each way? It's been a while since I've been on the bus. Very little. It's very little. And now, well, not now, but for some years now, the city of Muskegon has provided an additional service, which is essentially a free taxi. I'm assuming it's free.
I don't know. Not being a city resident and not being a senior, I'm not too.
Anyway, the city facing as our county will, as other cities and townships in our county will, facing the higher expenditures and in the city's case some reduced revenues in good measure because of SAPI. We know the city of Muskegon is going to be devastated once the Obama rules to close down the coal-fired electric plants when the Cobb plant shuts down. I believe they are the largest taxpayer in the city of Muskegon, but they are a huge the revenue source. So the city says, hey, we are running out of money. We have to look at things to cut, and we're going to cut this senior transit. And at the same time, so they put an initiative on the ballot, a proposal on the ballot,
more than one,
to keep it or not, and then they have an additional proposal to fund it.
Yeah,
which is and they were right side by side. So, and amazingly, perhaps not shockingly, the proposal to keep senior transit passed overwhelmingly, and the proposal to pay for senior transit was defeated overwhelmingly.
I've always been an advocate of keeping things as straightforward as possible when you bring them to the voters, and I don't really think that this passed that test. I would think it would be a very simple, single question: should we provide and pay for this service? But for some obscure legal reasons, I think it had to be two different questions on a ballot that was already pretty crowded for people. And so like you said, they voted to enact it, and then they voted not to pay for it.
Well, they voted in similar numbers, too, so it wasn't as if people didn't quite understand the second one. I mean, they decided to vote on the both. Well, I'll take a little different spin on this. On one hand, somebody might say, well, gee, that's schizophrenic. That's the schizophrenic folks in any community. But haven't they maybe said something entirely different, which is, we very much like senior transit, and we believe that it ought to be funded from the current funds that the city has, and in fact, you ought to cut something else. We don't believe that we should have an additional fee to pay this. You guys go back to work, find the funds for this, and cut something else. I mean, that certainly is a possible analysis of what that vote was.
That's one possible analysis. The news coverage says it's about $70,000 annually they need for this program. I'm not familiar enough with the city budget to know where and how they might be able to cut something else to come up with that, but they are looking at private fundraising for it, possibly charitable or from local givers, and I don't know if that's going to be successful or not. If it is, that's perfect. It solves the problem, but we'll see.
I don't. again, I'm not really, I don't have detailed and intimate knowledge of this program, but as I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, in many of the ski resorts throughout the country, which of course has people of significant means, but one of the things that ski resorts have to do is they have to provide mass transit because most people don't have vehicles and there's not the parking and all that kind of garbage. So they've got all these wonderful buses which are filled and fully paid for. The ski company or ski ticket pays for that type of transit. But in one of the reasons they have the transit, of course, is so that the folks who do really ultimately pay most of the taxes, which is the building owners, the homeowners, the condo owners, and all that, they pay that in their taxes. But then they'll have the opportunity to rent out that condo to a skier or rent out that home. And what happened was that and this is the case in Aspen, Colorado that I'm familiar with, but in Aspen, Colorado, they found that the large buses really were driving up these top of the hills just to pick up a few people or in some cases no people from these houses.
Bigger obviously, than they needed to be, huh?
Exactly. Well, they were not just bigger, but they were traveling up there for little reason. Of course, it made tremendous sense to stop at the big condo complexes and the apartment complexes and that kind of thing. And rather than continue doing what we seem to be doing here in Muskegon County, which is running these large buses around that are for the most part empty, if it wasn't for the dark the glass in the MATS buses, I would imagine there might be some outcry, but they are, take it from me, they are mostly empty most of the time. But anyway, in Colorado, they said, let's try something else. Let's bring in a real private-public partnership. Let's bring in our taxi cab companies and say, look, in the occasion where we have to send a bus, where we would have sent a bus up to the top of the mountain and spent a lot of gas and time and everything else, why don't we let those people contract directly with the cab company and say, hey, I'm a skier, can you pick me up? And be charged $1, so it wasn't free. And of course, most people would tip in addition, so maybe it would be $1 or $2 per person each way. But that's pretty reasonable, even in Muskegon for senior transit. That wouldn't be unreasonable. And then the difference in the cost that the taxi cab company would normally have paid, because it probably would be expensive, the bus system in Aspen, Colorado, picked up that difference. So number one, you kept a thriving and well-regulated group of taxi companies going. Of course, ultimately, one of the nice things about about profit-making companies is at the end they make a profit and they pay taxes on those profits. But you also provided a far better service, because let's face it, cabs are more efficient if you're looking for transport than a bus is, because it's going to come right to your house and pick you up and drop you off right up front. And that worked out wonderfully. And my thought, that one of the things that so bothers me when I go to county commission meetings and I go to city and township meetings is there seems to be a contempt for the people like you, Sean, and most certainly for people like me, but people who are interested in thinking out of the box. No, you've come up with a lot of really good ideas. And when I go to these meetings, citizens have good ideas, but there seems to be an aversion to listening to the little people because, I don't know what goes on in their minds. But it would seem to me that thinking out of the box on this particular issue, this senior transit in Muskegon, the city of Muskegon, if in fact it's worthy of keeping going, and I don't know if it is or not, but it seems to me free is always wrong. You at the very least ought to charge $1 or $2 at the absolute very least. Again, in particular, when you've got buses all over the county. And for those people who are truly indigent, I mean, and they desperately have to have service, well, then create a fund to pay the $2 each way. And then create a private-public partnership within the cab companies. And I think you'd find two things. Once you took it away from being free, you'd reduce the need an awful lot. We know this even with medical, when you increase the copay from $0 to $5, all of a sudden the pharmaceuticals usage drops dramatically. When you increase the copay to a doctor's visit, to $15, all of a sudden it isn't so critically important that you go to the doctor. And I think it'd be worthy of giving it a try. I can't tell you if it's an idea that would work in Muskegon or not, but I can tell you it's probably not even been considered. And we have in this community an awful lot of smart people whose knee-jerk reaction isn't to first, come up with some way to raise money, increase revenues, hire a new, or get a grant writer, but to come up with real ideas that will address the issue. And if the issue is to serve people who truly cannot afford transportation and who desperately need it, which ought to be a pretty small group, and don't have it already, because remember, we do have the Go Bus for handicapped people and things of that sort. But if in fact this is a legitimate need, there are other ways. My suggestion, or the suggestion that's been so successful in ski resorts throughout the United States, certainly isn't the only one, but it sure would be nice to have a brainstorming session.
Well, that's a very,
with the public.
That's a very thought-provoking proposal, and I think especially in a situation like this, where now we're facing the very real prospect of just the program not existing whatsoever.
Yeah,
that might be a good alternative. We have never been, Muskegon's never been a community with a very thriving taxi business. But if something like this,
maybe that's the reason. Yeah. Maybe we could help build that up. Hey, we've got to take a break here, and we will be back after the break, and we're going to talk about
Say, little Chico Pit, Mr. 305.
Hey, this is Pat Monahan from the band Train.
What's going on, everybody? This is Neo.
What's up? I'm Alicia Keys.
Hey, guys, I'm Bruno Mars. Listen to your favorite station.
Anytime, anywhere.
On iHeartRadio.
I love listening to my favorite radio stations on iHeartRadio.
Or create your own custom station.
On iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio.
You can now listen to iHeartRadio in your vehicle. If you drive a Ford equipped with Sync App Link, you can link iHeartRadio via your smartphone to your vehicle's entertainment system and access many of iHeartRadio's features hands-free with simple voice commands like what's playing or add to favorites and more. Go to Ford.com/sync for details. Driving while distracted can result in loss of vehicle control. Only use mobile phones and other devices, even with voice commands, when it is safe to do so. Not all features are compatible with all phones. Sync App Link is available on select models and compatible with select smartphone platforms. Commands may vary by phone and App Link software.
Now at Maple Hill Golf in Muskegon, Holland, and Granville, get great holiday gifts like Bushnell GPS watch, fully preloaded and no fees. Only $139.99 after $50 rebate. Plus dozens of $9.43 specials. Maple Hill Golf on the corner of Sternberg and Dangle at Fruitport, or MapleHillWestGolf.com.
Variety, the children's charity, is partnering with Walt Disney Pictures, Pixar, and Celebration Cinema to bring you this year's Gold Heart Pin campaign featuring Monsters, Inc. These special gold pins will be available for a limited time. Your donation can open doors for youth in our community and are available at all Celebration Cinema locations. Proceeds support Boys and Girls Clubs of Grand Rapids. Support Variety and Boys and Girls Clubs of Grand Rapids and show your heart of gold.
I knew I had a problem.
Eating and eating.
I felt so alone.
We understand. We're Overeaters Anonymous, and we have helped thousands of people just like you. Start living the life you deserve. Find us on the web at OA.org.
I knew I was stuck at this kid's house for the night, but those guys snuck up on me to try and pull the hand in a bowl of warm water trick. Well, that was enough for me. I went downstairs to sleep in the basement, even though it was pitch black. I left my sleeping bag upstairs, and that was a mistake, because it was freezing. I think it was probably the longest night of my life. To read more about the sleepover, check out Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Last Straw by Jeff Kinney. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library, and visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Salma Hayek, and I believe that number should be zero. Believe in zero.
Join the effort. Visit UNICEFUSA.org.
Call 1-800-914-9572. That's 1-800-914-9572.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
And we're back at EyeOnMuskegon. We've got Sean Hannity. Oh, my God.
Not even close.
Boy, there's an interesting slip of the tongue. Sean Mullally. And Brian Thomas. And this is your host, the lovable Jim Riley right here, talking about issues that are affecting us now and certainly will affect us down the road. Hey, one of the things, my grand lament in this show, our ratings continue, by the way. We are still Muskegon County's #1 rated political talk radio show. And actually, I believe we still might even be West Michigan's. number one rated show. But I've always really wanted to have more callers on this show.
Hint, call us.
Well, not just hint, but hint, Jim, you're going to get more callers if you tell them what the phone number is. And our number is 231-830-3109. So we'd love to have you on. We'd like to hear what you have to say. In particular, as Sean just mentioned, the situation with the Muskegon Transit. Neither one of us is all that really intimate with that particular service. It'd be nice if somebody really knew what they were talking about to help us out, since we've had such a grand time analyzing it.
Well, I don't think either one of us lived within the city limits. So.
No, but we could try them out. And as you know, I did spend a week traveling on MAP all over the county, and they're expanding that dramatically. Hey, I did say I wanted to get to the gun control thing, but a couple things I wanted to quickly touch on, if I could. I'm going to try as a regular part of this show to give you some insight into what happens in this past week on the various governmental areas. But of course, we're just talking about the senior transit. But the sheriff at the county level, the sheriff is, I believe, may have the single largest budget, at least in the discretionary area. But I found this interesting. The sheriff is requesting approval for snowmobile law enforcement grant. This comes from the DNR. Very specifically, they wanted $3,700 for one item, and then off-road vehicle enforcement for $4,400. So they'll get that grant, I'm sure. But what I found interesting was that they put the real numbers. On the same day, they said the sheriff's office is requesting approval to apply for the 2003 calendar year Marine Safety Grant, and it requires a 25% match. Now, this is an approval to apply for as opposed to accept. So they will come up with the money. But this one tends to be in the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what I found was that this was, of course, rubber stamp yes, without one of the county commissioners, one of the 11 county commissioners, asking, well, what's it likely to cost us? Because there's going to be a 25% match. But they don't seem to have that kind of curiosity about spending ever. Another issue this was voted on. This was voted to spend some more money. Trinity Village Nonprofit Housing. You may have heard of this last year, but they got a what they call Neighborhood Stabilization Program grant for $900,000 from the Department of HUD. And now, unless you're not listening to this show and you live in a rock, you might think that the United States is got a financial problem. Maybe we should really watch our spending. Well, HUD doesn't apparently agree with that at all. They gave a grant, and Muskegon County commissioners approved it with very little oversight, if any. Actually, I would suspect no oversight whatsoever. $900,000 to rehab. $900,000 to rehab 8 homes in the city of Muskegon.
They must be pretty distressed if it's going to cost that much to rehab.
In the Oakview neighborhood, and I don't know exactly where that is, but think about that, folks. They're going to rehab these houses for over $100,000 of your money, actually your children's money. And anyway, they voted on this 2 years ago, and apparently now 2 homes are completely rehabilitated. They're very proud of that in 2 years. But they want another $65,000 to rehab an additional home. And of course, the county commissioners thought that was a great idea and went right ahead. Now, this isn't money that's necessarily coming out of the county budget. But, folks, at some point, doesn't it become immoral to take money that you know is being borrowed from future generations or diverted from other, maybe better ways, and pour it into this sinkhole where you're buying in a distressed neighborhood? You're investing $100,000 a house. Is this money maybe better spent doing other things, or maybe it's even better spent by saying, no, we are not just going to take every free piece of money that we get. I mean, the sheriff, we know 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, took along with many others from the Department of Homeland Security, purchased dozens of snow cone machines. Now, these weren't shaved ice machines. These were snow cone machines. They said snow cone right on them. And they delivered them to the counties throughout the United States as part of some way to protect us from, who knows, bad things. This is, again, the Department of Homeland Security.
Snow cones.
Money. I think the snow cone machines are like $13,000 or something. Mm-hmm. But again, is at some point... Isn't it immoral to accept free money when you know, in fact, it isn't free money?
Well, given the choice between snow cone machines and rehabilitated houses, I know which one I would choose. As far as the houses go, I don't know so much about the funding source, and
it's from HUD. It's federal. It's all federal. There's no state money or county money in these that I'm aware of.
I guess I will say this: I'm glad at least to see them rehabilitating existing homes, because we've got so many that need it, as opposed to if they were to come in and do new construction of residential housing in the area when we already have kind of a glut of housing. We're down housing market right now, and I think if they were just building more new, I think that would just dilute the market more.
We'll have to agree to disagree there. I think that's a horrible waste. I think putting $100,000 into houses in a distressed neighborhood of federal money that you don't even have is immoral. But wait, folks, it gets worse. Another item that was purchased without comment, although Commissioner Bob Skolnick did ask if these included motors. The sheriff's office had requested and was approved, and the county commissioners, our leaders, without much in any way of question, approved another $300,000 of this is Homeland Security money to buy 2 boats for the sheriff's office. One boat $57,000, another boat $250,000. Now, I don't know if these boats are necessary. I don't know what these boats are going to be used for, and I don't know how many boats. I don't know the size of the sheriff's fleet. Perhaps he ought to change his name to his title to Admiral. But no one at the county commissioners meeting bothered to ask that question. Bob Skolnick asked, do these boats have engines, have motors? And there was many chuckles there, and the sheriff said, yes, they're both jet boats. But again, this country can't fix itself out of its financial mess when there is absolutely no question about accepting the snow cone machine from the Homeland Security, about accepting $300,000 worth of boats from Homeland Security without even any question about is it necessary. You would almost think that somebody might have been curious. There are 11 of those county commissioners might have been curious enough to say, what are we going to use these for? What do we need these for?
Well, on a federal level, I think the Department of Homeland Security budget process has been perverted into just one big pork barrel.
And it didn't start with Obama, by the way. I mean, this is Republicans too.
From its inception, yeah.
Yeah, this is. But at some point, do we have a moral responsibility to the young people in this country to at least say, wait a minute, I know this isn't free money. I know this is your money. If you're under 20 years old, very unquestionably, it's your money that we're spending, or your earnings that we're spending. Well, anyway, that's the way it goes. Interestingly, now we know that MATS is going to expand like crazy. They're looking to the Muskegon Area Transit, our county bus system. They're looking to have buses go out to Twin Lake, Whitehall, and Ravenna. And again, without any comment, there was a request to buy 4 small buses. And apparently, actually, I think it was 8 buses. Anyway, buy a bunch of buses. And for whatever reason, that request was taken off the agenda. I have no question whatsoever. Had it stayed there, nobody would have asked what are these buses going to be used for or whatever. But these are the kinds of things that happen on a weekly basis. At least there's a spirited discussion with input from citizens in the city of Muskegon. But I'm saddened when I see this kind of thing. And of course, we now have the new jail where they're talking about the $36 million jail, and again, borrowing money, truly with very little real legitimate proof that they'll have the ability to pay it back without coming back to the taxpayer later on. But, okay, that's the update. We're going to take a break here. Why don't we do this? We'll take a break in just a moment, and then we'll go into the the gun control, and this is a big issue, and it's certainly been.
The Talk in Muskegon program can now be heard live every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. here on News Talk 1090. This is John Van White.
And Brian Worsham. We will focus on community events, news, weather, and sports. We'll also bring you traffic updates, weekly segments like the movies with Ron Van Timmeren, the Biker Report, and Lumberjacks. This is Talk in Muskegon, right here, 8 to 9 a.m. on the Talk of Muskegon, News Talk 1090.
Sandy's Harley-Davidson can help you finish up your Christmas shopping. At Sandy's, they have a huge selection of Harley-Davidson parts, accessories, and motor clothes in stock, ready to wrap for you to put under your Christmas tree. This week at Sandy's, save 15% off genuine Harley-Davidson and officially licensed Harley-Davidson jewelry and watches. It's your last week tender for a chance to win the Christmas stocking. Rick, Karen, Marilyn Corley, and the entire staff at Sandy's Harley-Davidson wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Sandy's on the corner of M120 and M82, just west of Fremont, or online at sandysharley-davidson.com.
Detroit, Michigan, Motortown. Motown. The sounds of Detroit are on iHeartRadio. Groove to the Motor City's finest. Smokey.
Smokey was given to me by my favorite uncle,
Stevie.
The ideas come from experience.
Marvin.
I like all the people at Motown.
Diana.
Everybody was trying to outdo everybody.
And more. Check out the sounds of Detroit on iHeartRadio or at iHeartRadio.com.
The Exquisite Corpse. A very unusual and completely amazing story pieced together out of so many parts that it is not possible to describe them all here, so go ahead and just start reading. The full moon lights the silver rails winding around dark mountains and over steep gorges of jagged rock and one freezing cold rushing black mountain river. I wish there was enough time to describe all of the funny twists and turns, especially the elephant clown party, that led up to now, but there isn't enough time because there is a ticking clock, and the two passengers we care most about don't know anything about it. In a sleeping berth in the third car from the end of the train are two children, 11-year-old twins who have just run away from the circus. The girl's name is Nancy, the boy's name is Joe. They have no idea that those are not their true names, though they will figure it out soon enough. To see what happens next, visit read.gov to read The Exquisite Corpse, a riveting adventure pieced together by John Shuska, Shannon Hale, Daniel Handler, and other popular authors. Explore new worlds. Read. This exciting message is brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
Betsy, look at these sweaters. They'd look amazing on our girls.
Maybe.
Come on, what's wrong?
Suzanne, I have no business being in the store. I should not be shopping. Things are really tight. We're behind on our mortgage.
Listen, Bill and I had the same problem, and we got some really great counseling, and it was free. I'm going to email you the information.
If you even think you may be in danger of foreclosure, call the National Foundation for Credit Counseling today at 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org. Public service from the NFCC.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Neo, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit UNICEFUSA.org.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. As the last victims of the Sandy Hook school killings were laid to rest Saturday, the debate over how to prevent another such shooting heats up.
The National Rifle Association reacted to the massacre in Newtown, Connecticut by calling for armed guards in the nation's schools. A gun store owner suggests the teachers should be armed as well, all the time. One congressman says these steps are all wrong.
An insult to anyone's intelligence. It's wildly impractical to think you could put a police officer in every school.
Illinois Democrat Michael Quigley.
Fox News Radio's Ron Flatter. For some Christmas week travelers, the weather outside may be frightful.
Oklahoma City, you got some snow coming. That's going to be Tuesday, Christmas Day. There's also a chance that day, by the way, for some severe weather across parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. Take a look at your forecasts for the day today. Into the Northeast, we're going to be talking about a little bit more lake effect snow.
Fox meteorologist Rick Reichmuth. Fox News. We report. You decide.
Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. Sunny to partly cloudy today with a high of 33. North winds 5 to 10. Tonight partly cloudy in the evening, becoming overcast overnight. A low of 26. Northeast winds 5 to 10. Tomorrow cloudy with a high of 32. Northeast winds 5 to 10. And then for Christmas Day, a mix of clouds and sunshine with a high of 32. Keeping you informed, this is News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon. with a high of 32. Keeping you informed, this is News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government.
We are back. EyeOnMuskegon. Hey, we before the break, we said we were going to come back and talk about the school shootings and gun control. And, just as an aside, not surprisingly to those listening, listen to and watch Fox News fairly often, certainly in the morning. And it seems to me that the anchors on Fox News must all live in Connecticut. And of course, they're at the age where they have children about the age of those young children who were murdered. But they seem to be really focusing a lot on the angst, and certainly anybody can understand the angst, and I don't want to go back there. But the result of this has been really what ought to be two questions, but is really kind of boiled down to gun control. It bothers me, certainly doesn't surprise me. It seems that the argument and the discussion, the nationwide conversation, really ought to be, how can we best protect our children, as opposed to how can we best control guns from legal people owning them, and to a lesser extent from crazy people owning them. And I would just suggest that anyone who comes up with an idea for controlling gun, again, that's a political word, but for changing the gun laws, if in fact you're going to use this tragedy in Connecticut as the reason for making these changes, the President of the United States has made that very clear. Mayor Bloomberg and the senators from Connecticut and other Democrats primarily, but the folks who want stronger government intervention into ownership, they made it very clear that these rule changes are necessary because of this tragedy and the possibility of it happening again in the future. And I would say, before you settle on any particular rule, the first question that must be asked, and it really deserves a cogent answer, is how will this law have protected those children and those teachers in Connecticut? Because if this law will have no effect on stopping that kind of an event, then maybe we ought to move on and look at a different law that might have an effect and might protect those people. Because we see the politicization of this, and we see the media going berserk. I guess on the front page of one of the New York newspapers was a picture of Ray LaPierre, the president of the NRA. And I don't know exactly what they called him, but, insane or crazy or something, because he was suggesting that, in fact, if we had armed folks in the schools, that most certainly would have had a greater chance of protecting the kids than many of the other things. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you're on another side of conversation than I am. Are you a gun owner?
I'm not.
Okay.
I think whenever an event like this happens, it's very tragic, and in the immediate aftermath, one of the frustrating things is it becomes very difficult to have a conversation about it, because everybody's got their predefined positions and seems to retreat right back to the same arguing points that have been there forever. And there's a knee-jerk reaction to dismiss or denounce anything that comes from the other side, even before you have a chance to mentally process it. Like Wayne LaPierre comes forward and says, well, if we had armed professional guards in schools, then maybe they could have intervened and stopped this. And, well, of course, absolutely, he's right. And, some people on the other side will just not listen to it because of who's doing the speaking. And I think that doesn't really move us forward.
Well, there are some statistics out there that are clear. That with one single exception, every single mass shooting, public mass shooting of people, I think, in which more than 3 people were killed, has been taken place in a gun-free zone, places where it's publicly made known that guns are not allowed. The only exception was the Gabby Giffords shooting a couple years ago in Tucson. So it's clear, just like I don't even think we see these anymore, but remember when all the school administrators were so proud of themselves by putting drug-free. This is a drug-free school zone sign up, and how successful that was. I think it's the same kind of thing. It may be good for the sign manufacturers and this county or city employees who put the signs in the ground, but it has little effect in protecting anybody. And the high point for mass killings in the United States certainly wasn't in this past few years. Matter of fact, gun deaths nationally are down. I think they've been down straight for decades. But the high point in mass killings in the United States was actually in 1929. And
Prohibition.
I'm not sure when. I think Prohibition happened after 29.
That was a little after.
Yeah, maybe in 30. But no, and needless to say, it wasn't necessarily with guns, but it was with there was some Oklahoma City. This was an explosion kind of stuff. But an ex-Republican congressman who's now the host of the morning show on MSNBC, Joe Scarborough, made a comment, and he says anyone who, quote, claims to be a proud NRA, or he claims to be a proud NRA member, but he said there is no reason to allow someone to have an assault weapon that shoots 30 rounds a second. Do you agree with that?
30 rounds a second?
That's what he said, yeah. He said there's no reason to allow someone to have an assault weapon that shoots 30 rounds a second.
I don't know that that's the technological capability of some of the guns. That sounds pretty quick. I mean, maybe 30 a minute.
But you'd agree that there's no reason, you'd agree with him that there's no reason to have a gun like that.
I don't think you need 30 rounds a second to kill a deer or a burglar that might be breaking into your house.
Should we have a law against it, though?
I think one of the most important things to remember is there's not going to be a panacea. I think in the hypothetical situation that you just put a ban on all guns, that's not going to stop the violence because there's going to be a black market. And going to the other end of the spectrum, if you greatly expanded the availability and the concealed carry ability, I think that's not going to be a panacea either. If we look at the Gabby Gifford shooting, there were a couple people present in the crowd being shot at that had the concealed handguns, and they weren't able to respond until the shooter finally had to stop to reload, in which case they took them down because they were under fire. And so, I mean, there's not...
It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to start to stop someone who doesn't mind dying in the process. We know the cost of protecting the President of the United States,
and the assailant
probably the billions. Probably.
And the assailant always has the element of surprise. So I mean, that's a huge advantage.
Well,
what
about assault weapons? Now, I think before we get to assault weapons, I want to go back to this comment because many people have said, and apparently there seems to be some agreement, certainly in the media areas, that we need at some point to stop the ability of people to legally buy machine guns. Would you agree with that?
I think you need to look at what is a particular weapon designed and optimized for. It basically falls into three categories. You've got hunting weapons, which your shotguns, your deer rifle, and whatnot. And I think those are very non-controversial. I don't know anyone that's saying get rid of those. You've got personal self-defense. Your handguns that they're a size that you can conceal, that you can use for personal self-defense. Those aren't too controversial either. I think there are some fringe people maybe wanting to ban those, but for the most part, people respect that right. The more military grade, you might describe, weapon, the kind that are capable of shooting many rounds quickly, that are optimized for killing large number of humans extremely fast, that's where you get into the controversy.
Okay, so you would agree that we ought to ban machine guns. Well, they have been banned in this country since the 50s. You're not allowed legally to buy a machine gun. You're not allowed to buy a gun that is an automatic weapon. And unfortunately, that's what I was trying to get at, we have too many people, including senators and congressmen, saying that we've got to stop automatic weapons from being legally available. They are illegal, folks. There's two types of weapons generally out there. They are the shotguns, maybe the one or two shot type guns, and then they are what's called semi-automatic. And semi-automatic means that you've got to pull the trigger one pull at a time in order to shoot. Now, that's what was used in Connecticut, and they certainly have a lethal component. But I don't know why the left, and I don't know why the media consistently, and here's a Joe Scarborough, ostensibly an intelligent guy, and he says, he calls himself a proud NRA member, and he doesn't understand, unless he's lying, and I would suspect that's probably the case, but he doesn't understand that machine guns have been banned for decades. And that, as you say, I'm not even sure there's a gun out there that does shoot 30 rounds a second. And yet he has the comfort zone to say that on television. This is a big deal. There's a third or a fourth reason, by the way, to own guns, and that comes back with the Second Amendment, and that is to protect yourself perhaps from government. And in the countries that have had national gun bannings in the past, Germany, certainly pre-World War II, was one. The Soviet Union. There are any numbers of reasons why citizens might want to be armed and protect themselves against government. Now, we don't want a Ruby Ridge situation. We don't want a David Koresh situation where you've got lunatics out there. But unfortunately, what I believe is happening, and again, it happens on both sides, and hopefully we will be able to call out everybody on this, but ask the one question. Certainly, the Sean Mullally's and the Jim Rileys are not those folks who are violating the laws. If you're going to change the law, if you're going to go after gun owners and gun stores and those folks who, for whatever reason, there's sport shooting too. People who just like to take their gun and take it to a gun range, and there's plenty of gun clubs in Muskegon County. But if you're going to make a law change with the idea of as a reaction to what happened in Connecticut, most certainly ask and get an answer to the question, how will this law have protected the children in the in that school and the teachers in that school? And if you can't, well, then we ought to call it what it is, a pure political hack job against people who don't want other people to have guns, which is so amazing to me, because we know Hollywood and Mayor Bloomberg and others, they all have armed guards around them.
Yeah.
But they don't want Sean Mullally to have a gun.
Well, you mentioned the importance of I'll call it community defense, about the community having arms to protect themselves against oppression, and that is very important. You saw that during our Revolutionary War, but there's a limit to where that can work.
Well, we see it in Texas now, where you have an actual invasion of drug dealers from across the border in Mexico, and our federal government, and in many cases the state government, not being there to protect those citizens who live there. So there is a self-defense event going on as we speak, and we are running a little bit out of time, so I got to get into a wrap-up. Hey, again, you can always contact me, and certainly Sean, if you contact me, I'll get you in touch with him. But you can go to EyeOnMuskegon.com. It's got our email address. It's got our phone number. Don't forget that I am still on the Talkin' Muskegon show, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I will not be at Carmen's Cafe this week because of Christmas. And thankfully, our county commissioners will not be able to spend money they don't have this week. But the brand new 9 county commissioners will be signed in, sworn in, and start up on, I believe it's January 3rd. We will be there. You are all invited to that. We are still having some little problems with our TV show. Hopefully Monday we'll be back on. And we are Comcast 397. That's the Eye on Muskegon show. That's us. Same thing you just heard here, but it's us looking at each other, nodding each other very sagely. Thanks again, Sean Mullally, Brian Thomas, all you wonderful listeners and viewers out there. Next week, we'll be back, put the spotlight on those who think they are better at spending your hard-earned dollars than you are. And again, you can listen to the show at EyeOnMuskegon.com 24/7. Just go to that link. It's top one there. Check out my show prep links, by the way, at MuskegonPundit.com. Folks, have a great week in our little piece of heaven. Next week, we'll put the eye on you, Muskegon.
Well, don't you love him sometime? Yeah, boy. Love me sometime.
C'est le Chico cockpit, Mr. 305.
Hey, this is Pat Monahan from the band Train.
What's going on, everybody? This is Neo.
What's up? I'm Alicia Keys.
Hey, guys, I'm Bruno Mars.
Listen to your favorite station.
Anytime, anywhere.
On iHeartRadio.
I love listening to my favorite radio stations on iHeartRadio.
Or create your own custom station.
On iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
You can now listen to iHeartRadio in your vehicle. If you drive a Ford equipped with Sync App Link, you can link iHeartRadio via your smartphone to your vehicle's entertainment system and access many of iHeartRadio's features hands-free with simple voice commands like what's playing or add to favorites and more. Go to Ford.com/sync for details. Driving while distracted can result in loss of vehicle control. Only use mobile phones and other devices, even with voice commands, when it is safe to do so. Not all features are compatible with all phones. Sync App Link is available on select models and compatible with select smartphone platforms. Commands may vary by phone and App Link software.
This is WKBZ Muskegon and WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
1-800-605-9625.
This is WKBZ Muskegon and WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Good morning and welcome to the Polka Melodies. It's Sunday, December 23rd, 2012. 2 more days until Christmas. Are you prepared? It's time for you to prepare for that magical season of Christmas. Only 2 days away. We wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year from the Polka Melodies. Good morning. It's 10 a.m. already on Sunday.
Hello.